Well, welcome very much to this panel here on Battery Innovation Days. The topic of the panel here is research and innovation worldwide, with the sub-statement or question, what's going on? We will have 1.5 hours to explore this topic, which is, of course, way too short even to scratch the surface of this. In order to address this topic, we will have 2 panel sessions here within this session. And in order to get as many expert views as possible onto this subject. The first panel will look at the most common battery chemistries for high-end applications, lithium-ion, and what is going on in our research and innovation worldwide. The second panel discussion that we're coming to about 2:30 is exploring emerging technologies for electrochemical storage, energy storage, and what's beyond the current state of art in lithium-ion chemistry. So getting into the first panel of this session, we will have a look at lithium-ion technology and, as I said, the current research and innovation in the area. I don't think anyone has missed the tremendous growth in innovation and industrialization of the lithium-ion battery. The main driver, of course, of this is the electrification of transportation and the explosion on the market of electric vehicles. And just to put this into a perspective, if we take Europe as an example, 2017, there was in principle no cell manufacturers established at all on the continent. Today, 4 years later, we count up to 45 gigafactory projects, and at least one of those will start to produce cells by the end of this year. This is with the existing technology, of course, but the enormous investment are driving research and innovation forward in various areas around battery storage. And in order to look at this first panel, to help with this first panel on lithium-ion technology, I have some distinguished panel members here that I'd like to turn to now. And each of the members of this panel, they will have 5 minutes to make an introduction. After that, we will have some topics to bring up and to discuss, some questions where we dive a little bit deeper into the presentations here. Also, if you have any questions on the presentations or around the area of lithium-ion research and innovation in the world, please state them on the web or on the session notes here, and we will try to bring them up as questions to the participants. Okay, so let's get into this. Our first panelist we have today is Debbie Prasad Dash from India Energy Storage Alliance. Debbie is currently working as an executive director for the Indian Energy Storage Alliance as customized energy solution. He has been involved in techno-commercial feasibility strategy and formulation of consulting in emerging technologies as energy storage, advanced battery, renewable integration, smart grids, electric vehicles, infrastructure, and microgrids. He is involved in policy recommendations for energy storage and electric vehicle roadmap for India. Also manufacturing policy for advanced energy storage technologies and development of ancillary markets in India. He has taken the lead in new strategic partnerships and move initiatives of IESA, and is currently part of BIS Energy Storage Standard Committee. Debbie has over a decade of industry experience and alumnus of program by government for Germany and DIP, Ministry of Commerce and Industry of India. So Debbie, please make your presentation and I beg you a little bit there to keep it to 5 minutes, please.
So, I hope everyone able to hear me. Yes. Thanks for the introduction. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yes, so India Energy Storage Alliance working with different stakeholders from across the globe for both for manufacturing and adoption of energy storage in India. Yes, the majority of the new technologies will be lithium ion, apart from lead acid and other chemistries like flow batteries, aluminum air and other chemistries. Uh, but what we see in Indian market, currently there is multiple energy storage projects has been installed in India by leading companies like Fluence, AES and others, and there is many numbers of batteries also installed in electric mobility and power electronics. Today I attended a meeting for 1 gigawatt hour large scale stationary energy storage project. So India is a country where currently there is zero cell manufacturing happening, but there is more than 1 gigawatt hour of cell to pack assembling is currently going on. So there is a huge opportunity of the cell manufacturing. As I am mentioning, in solar industry, India is now in the top 10. In wind industry, also India is in the top 10. So the pace of growth is very high. So from starting from zero to the acceleration of the market is high. So if any global company is interested in Indian market, both for manufacturing and innovation, this is the perfect time. And we work with 160 plus companies. Out of 160, there are more than 40 companies from different countries. Many companies from Europe, they are also planning to enter Indian market. So can we go to the next slide? So we expect there is a huge potential of market demand from more than 300 gigawatt hour, both for the electric mobility and also for the stationary energy storage opportunity are there for next 7 to 8 years. So it includes both electric two-wheeler, electric buses, also urban air mobility, electric car, passenger cars, and also there is a opportunity for the stationary energy storage, which includes large scale renewable integration, or for the grid applications like ancillary services, and also the applications like behind the meter applications and distributed energy storage. So with this opportunity, yes, many of this market is currently supplied by lead acid batteries, but with the time for last 5 to 6 years, lithium ion is taking the major share of this market, and it will continue to grow. Can you go to the next slide? So over the time, there are different policies happening in India. So I will mention specifically manufacturing and innovation policy. So there is different institutions from Government of India, including Department of Science and Technology, various national labs, CRI, CMET, NPL, NML, they are working on indigenous lithium-ion technologies. Apart from that, there are different companies which is already announced in the media and news. They have already partnered with global technologies providers for the gigafactories in India, and also for the technologies for recycling, urban mining, and other aspects like refining or chemical processing. So over the time, policies both for the manufacturing, innovation, and also applications has been developed since 2013. And this year, the new policy which is announced, it is a scheme to provide incentive for 50 gigawatt hour advanced cell chemistry battery manufacturing. Can you go to the next slide? Yes, so this scheme is just announced this year. Now the bid is open for a 50 gigawatt hour gigafactories. So each company can apply for 5 gigawatt hour minimum to maximum 20 gigawatt hour, and they will get an incentive of $10 to $20 per kilowatt hour production. And you have to set up your plant within 2 years to 5 years, and the incentive will be given for next 5 years. So there, we are expecting many global companies to apply for it, and December 30 is the last date to apply for this incentive from the Government of India. And through this, we not only see the gigafactories will open in India, it also open the cell chemical processing, refining, raw material supply, equipment supply, component supply. So the overall ecosystem will be developed. So apart from this, there is also advanced lithium ion project will come up. So there is another scheme which is coming up next year, which is called NIS SEC, where the solid state batteries or on the higher energy density or higher cycle life batteries will get incentive. So both advanced lithium ion and lithium ion gigafactories will get cash incentive from Government of India, and if any companies who are working in this space, they can take the advantage of this. Can you go to the next slide? Yes, so we are doing a conference focused on India, which is on India Energy Storage Week, which is the 8th annual event from 13th to 18th in India. And can we go to the next slide? Yes. So just there is many queries always happens, like India doesn't have lots of raw materials for the lithium and manufacturing. So is it will, how India will pass this hurdle? So India has already have a strategic partnership with Australia, Argentina, Bolivia, and other countries. So India have already created a government organization called Kabil, which is working on the raw material acquisitions from different countries. And also there are different Indian companies who have already started working on the chemical processing of taking the raw materials and making it battery grade. So it will see that nickel, cobalt, already India is working on the, already India is having aluminium, graphite, copper, manganese, only lithium, nickel, cobalt, some part of the lithium batteries which need to be imported from other countries. And if you develop the recycling ecosystem in next 2 to 3 years, then 50% of market will be supplied from these recycled batteries. So both from the manufacturing, from innovation to the end of the recycling, India is working on it. And we see what India did in solar industry, India did in wind industry, it will replicate in the energy storage industry. And many companies has already taken their first step to understand the market, both on the installation, manufacturing, research and innovation. So there are many global companies who have set up their headquarters in India on the research and innovation side, including giving some example of Bosch, Eaton, many other companies. So we see this government scheme and the market will create a robust ecosystem for global players to enter Indian market. Any thanks for the slides. Can you go to the next slide? If anyone have any queries on the market, and as we are doing this annual conference, we are having a leading magazine called ETN magazine, which is a global showcase. We are also the founding member of the World Energy Storage Day, which is celebrated every year on 22nd September. Many of you already participated this year. So we'll be happy to take this global collaboration to the next stage.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Very interesting to see that also India is setting up a battery value chain regarding lithium ion. So that's I certainly hope that there will be some questions on that in the chat here coming up. So next up is Professor Noshin Omar, who is representing ABEE, which is Avesta, Battery and Energy Engineering. And Dr. Noshin Omar is the CEO of ABEE and has contributed during the last 8 years more than 23 European projects. And it's such as Superlib, Seavolver, Selfie, Ghost, Azure, and many others. And also in this regard, he's been coordinating a number of these projects himself. So. I think we will have a presentation here, and as we see on the slide here, on the battery energy storage market in the Middle East. So please, Noshin, go ahead here.
Yes, thanks, Johan, for the introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon from my side. EB is located in Belgium, but we are also from a while active in the Middle East market, and more specifically in Saudi Arabia, where we are serving the industry from the energy storage market. Can we go to next slide, please? So if you look to the Middle East market, the main market right now is focused quite not so much on the e-mobility, but much more on the renewable large projects. On the left side, you see one of the massive projects that are existing in Saudi Arabia, for instance, for the city of NEOM, where large renewable projects and typically PV and wind oriented applications are popping up in the gigawatt scales applications. So if you look to the overall market there, we see that the total market is predicted around 200 gigawatts and large scalable renewable energy projects, and with a total amount of investment which is close to $250 billion. But this means also when we speak about creation of such types amount of energies is also there is need for high amount of energy storage, and particularly batteries. And in the past, a lot of lead acid technology has been used. Also redox flow batteries has been used on large scale, but we see during the last 2 years as a clear shift towards lithium ion technology, and more specifically lithium iron phosphate. And that is what you see on the right side, and a big project which was that Huawei won from China for a project in Saudi Arabia with a total amount of 1.3 gigawatt hour lithium iron phosphate for the city of NEOM for renewable application. That's actually to demonstrate how large the scale of such type of applications are in general. Next slide, please. And if we further look to that, and it's not stopping actually to renewables, and the full Middle East is now transforming their full society towards renewable and environmentally friendly energy sources. And the city of NEOM, which is fully new city in Saudi Arabia on the Red Sea side, isn't just an example how it is happening. Fully new developed city from A to Z, which is going to be fully operational on renewable energy 100%. It will be the first city in the world that it will run completely on zero CO2 emissions, with a total investment of $500 billion. So just in illustration how large the projects are happening there. And of course there the amount of energy storage is quite dramatically high, not only for renewable, but also for telecommunications, for UPS, for e-mobility, because in this dedicated city, no conventional vehicles will be allowed at all. So from that perspective, we see also in general, not only Saudi Arabia, but also Emirates, Kuwait, and other countries, and particularly from the GCC market, are making also the fast shift to the electromobility, which we will see afterwards based on some number of examples. There is another project which is now has been introduced a couple of days ago, Oxygon. That's also $1 billion project, and it's actually showing the types of large-scale projects that are happening there and the needs for energy storage. Next slide, please. Now, if we look to the main applications where the typically needs of battery storage are for the Middle East market, particularly the GCC market, we see the huge focus for renewable integration, telecommunication, street lighting, grid stabilization, and last but not least, automotive. And if we look to the chemistries that are typically we are using there for when it comes to lithium ion technology is typically for 90% lithium iron phosphate. The reason for that is because thermal is much more stable, and such type of applications are also quite well cost driven, and that's the reason why there is a huge amount, let's say, huge focus on the lithium iron phosphate. And there is a general policy in such countries to manufacture such type of technologies in the coming years locally, and all the ingredients in lithium iron phosphate can be found in such type of countries, and particularly in Saudi Arabia. Next slide. Nevertheless, there is also some shift towards more e-mobility. Clearly, Emirates recently announced by 2030, no conventional vehicles will be allowed to be registered. That's a clear shift towards electrification. But we see larger initiatives happening in general. On the left side, you see Lucid Motors, which decided to build a factory in Saudi Arabia, fully battery electric vehicle. And there will be also, for the first time, Saudi Arabia, a battery cell factory, which will be mainly NMC based, with a total capacity close to 30 gigawatt hour. On the right side, the title is wrong. My apologies for that. An electric bus factory in UAE, in Emirates United Arab Emirates, for local manufacturing. In Egypt, there is another factory which is operated by Photon, fully electric. And we see even in the little country like Qatar, where Yutong is already producing large amount of batteries, over 700 buses, with the idea also to introduce that later as well by having local manufacturing. So concretely, there is in the Middle East a strategic and strategy, let's say clear strategy towards an electrification, but also creating and the local battery market from there, starting from mining, ending with recycling. And many countries are now working on the changing the regulations in order to make that possible. And the market is going to increase dramatically the coming years, and it's a very nice opportunity for the new players to jump in this market. Next slides. If there will be any questions or remarks now or in the future, I will be happy to answer to that, or you can also reach me by mail, which can be seen on the last slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very interesting, Norshin. And it's really encouraging to see that also in Middle East, there is a strong movement towards renewables, where really the conditions are good for it. We're moving on to our next panelist, which is Rosalind Gummow from Australian Battery Society. Rosalind is a materials chemist and lithium-ion technology expert. She's currently co-director of the Australian Battery Society, which is a non-profit organization for the promotion of battery energy storage in Australia. The Australian Battery Society aims to bring together scientists, engineers, industry representatives, and policymakers to advance battery energy storage in Australia. Rosalind is currently engaged as a technical specialist at VSPC, a Brisbane-based electrode manufacturing company and a subsidiary of Lithium Australia. She also holds an adjunct position at James Cook University in Queensland and is a member of the executive team organizing the VRFB-2022 meeting to be held in Sydney, Australia. Rosalind holds a PhD in chemistry, and her career has focused on the development of and optimization of cathode and anode materials for lithium-ion batteries. And she's the co-inventor of several patents for lithium-ion electrode materials. So please, Rosalind, go ahead. Take the stage.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. So I'll be speaking a little bit about lithium-ion battery R&I in Australia. So to start off with, Australia has a strong position, and because of the natural abundance of raw materials in Australia, so we're really well placed to benefit from the lithium-ion battery boom. Australia is one of the world's top producers of lithium, with 10 of the biggest lithium deposits in the world, and it also ranks in the top 5 globally for resources of battery minerals, including cobalt, iron, and manganese ore, and currently produces all the metallic elements needed for lithium-ion battery production, and it also has commercial reserves of graphite for anodes. In addition, Australia's mineral wealth is still largely unexplored, and there is still great potential for further minerals discovery and development in the future. So there are a lot of projects in a very early stage of development that will still come on stream in a few years' time. But currently, most of the ore is exported without much onshore processing, and that means that the GDP contribution is not as great as it might be. Next slide, please. So because of the vast resources in Australia, in the past, there's been not much need to value add, and the ore has simply been exported overseas for further processing. But with the recent geopolitical tensions and anxiety around the supply chain, Australia has realized that it has a key role to play, and it no longer wants to be just the supplier of raw materials to the world. And Australia has recognized that there's a great opportunity to build a manufacturing industry in the lithium-ion battery field. Australia's got no shortage of research capability in this area, and there are many organizations which are supporting research in lithium-ion battery materials and cells and all the way through the value chain. These include the Australian Research Council, the ARENA organization, the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, and the Future Battery Industries CRC, which has been quite active in the last few years. So the strengths of Australia are many. Obviously, we have abundant raw materials. We have a stable government, which makes us, in many cases, the preferred supply partner for many industries. We have a strong base in mining and minerals, some world-class operations, strong capital raising avenues, and globally competitive industries, which we could collaborate with in development of the lithium-ion battery industry. The downside is that we're distant from the markets where our lithium-ion batteries are used in consumer vehicles or in stationary storage. We also suffer from severe competition from other nations which are already heavily invested in this field. There's a lack of onshore processing of many of our materials, and there's a lack of champions for change in this area. So some solutions around this could be to build industry hubs where we have strong anchor tenants, which could then build industries around that and give it more sort of critical mass. We need industry government collaboration to leverage the unique strengths of Australia to build this industry locally. We need to incentivize local value add, so we're not losing out on the increased value of our products. We need to educate the market so that they are aware of the opportunities in this area and we can leverage investment. And we need greater strategic engagement by government at both federal and state level to develop this lithium-ion industry in Australia. Okay, next slide, please. So the government has initiated a few schemes recently which are encouraging modern manufacturing. So a $1.5 billion fund has recently been launched by the government to position the country as a world leader in renewable energy transition. The aim of this fund is to boost the processing of critical minerals for energy storage, including battery storage. And energy storage has been recognized by the government as a critical enabler of cost-effective, reliable, low-emission electricity. And battery storage is essential to stabilize the grid as we get increasing penetration of renewable energy from solar and wind. So we'll need up to 90 gigawatts of new dispatchable resources, which will include battery storage, to stabilize the grid as we move forward to 2040. So Australia has also got a large amount of stationary storage deployed on the grid. The biggest battery in the world, the Victorian Big Battery, has just reached full capacity, which is 400 megawatt hours of capacity. And this is in place to boost the capacity of the interconnector between Victoria and New South Wales at times of peak demand, which would be the peak of summer. It's also used for frequency regulation and arbitrage markets. Australia also has a very high penetration of rooftop solar. 1 in 4 households or businesses already have solar panels. And there is a fairly large uptake of battery storage behind the meter, and this is being incentivized and increasing rapidly. And there's also been a lot of work done around developing microgrids to utilize that behind the meter storage to stabilize the grid quality. And this becomes increasingly important with increasing solar penetration. Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, so then the other thing that I thought I'd emphasize is that Australia is now starting to move up the value chain by producing battery chemicals from the raw materials, the lithium-bearing ore. There are 3 lithium hydroxide plants that have recently started development, and some of them are already coming online. So the first one is a 24 kiloton per year plant at Kwinana, which is a joint venture between IGO and Tianqi Lithium, which will come on stream January, March next year. There's a 2nd kiloton per year production train at Kwinana, which will be completed in 2024. And the plan is to get it up to 96 kilotons per year eventually. There's a second plant for lithium hydroxide, which is a 60-40 joint venture between US Albemarle and Australian-based Mineral Resources, also in Kemerton. That'll be 24 kilotons per year initially by the end of 2021, with expansion up to 100 kilotons per year in the future. And then the third plant is a collaboration between SQM Chile and Australian Wesfarmers, which is in the early stages of production of another 50 kilotons per year. First outputs are expected in 2024. So further projects are also underway for innovative minerals extraction and novel processing to battery components, building on the minerals and mining strength of Australia. And the focus is on closed loop processing all the way through. Australia is working to build the brand, the Australia brand, and the focus is on traceability, a low carbon footprint, and provenance. And this would be an advantage to customers for their low carbon emission product targets and insurance of supply chain integrity. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, then the last thing I was going to mention is the focus on recycling. So Australia has, at the moment, a low level of lithium-ion battery recycling, only about 2%, but it's been recognized to be a growing area of industry and a potential important industry in Australia. The prediction is that the waste could exceed 100,000 tons by 2036, so that's a significant amount, and about 95% of it could be recycled and used further in batteries or other high-value industries. So the Australian government has recently accredited the Battery Stewardship Scheme, which is a scheme which encourages responsible management of batteries from design right through to end of life over the entire supply chain. There will be a levy on imported batteries, and this will be used to fund rebates for accredited collectors, processors, and recyclers of used batteries. And the government has put $1 million into that scheme to boost battery collection. Yeah, so that's just a few things that highlight current activity in the Australian landscape. Next slide, please. Yeah, if there are any questions or comments afterwards, please feel free to contact me either on my email or on the LinkedIn. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I find it quite encouraging to see that apart from raw materials, you're also focusing on, or starting to focus on recycling, because that's definitely the way to go in this when we're going to solve this system. So our final panelist up is Professor Hong Li, who's at the Institute of Physics in the Chinese Academy of Science. He's been studying material for lithium-ion batteries all the way since '93, and he made important contributions to nano silicon anode and solid lithium-ion batteries, failure analysis. And the current interest of Mr. Hong Li is the high energy density of lithium batteries, solid batteries, failure mechanisms, and fundamental solid-state ionic problems. He's published over 383 papers in peer-reviewed journals. He filed 100 patents, 50 of them have been granted. And he's also regional editor of Solid-State Ionics and Ionics Journal of Materials. He's a co-founder of 3 companies to produce silicon anode materials, solid lithium batteries, and sodium-ion batteries. And he is co-founder of 2 research institutes as well. So he's been awarded as Distinguished Young Scientist, NSFC, and he serves as scientific committee member of MOST and MIT in China. He's also a board member in international meetings of lithium batteries and in the National Society of Solid-State Ionics. So please, Professor Hong, give your presentation.
Okay, thanks, Johan, for your nice introduction. I'm Hong Li from Institute of Physics. And also, it's my pleasure to give a talk, and thanks for the invitation. Just now, I'm very happy to hear the talk from the Debbie, Naoshi, and Rosalind to understand the very hot situation of energy storage in India, in Middle East, and also in Australia, especially for the nature south. So now I want to introduce the brief introduction on the R&D activity and national project on batteries in China. Because currently I'm in charge of the national project and the national plan on the energy storage in China. So here you see that this slide showed so in the last year in the world published over 13,000 papers on lithium batteries, and China is the #1 country to occupy nearly 47%. So it's very hot topic in China to study the battery, and especially lithium battery. Okay, please go to the next page. Okay, so there's some time delay. So here we show the progress of the pure electric driving car technology batteries. In last 15 years, actually the energy density increased. I mean the pack energy density from the 50 to 200 watt-hour per kilogram, and also the cost decreased significantly to the 0.1 US dollar per watt-hour. So this exactly stimulates the growth of the lithium batteries in China, and become the #1 country to produce the lithium battery in the world. Is already 72% in the world market. Okay, please go to next page. So the time delay is significant for me. Okay, I haven't see the next page. Okay. So please go to the next page.
Do you see that they are switching?
Not yet. Sorry.
Okay, we are on the slide saying review on national R&D
okay.
projects targets.
So I will continue to talk about this. So in China, so we have already set up the national target for next 15 years. The key idea is try to realize the target for the 2030 carbon peak and 2060 carbon neutrality, to develop renewable energy, and also to develop a smart grid, and especially energy storage and hydrogen energy essential strategy. Okay, please go to next page. So here we show a whole innovation chain and also production chain. So in China already, from raw material to the battery material to the cell modular pack, and the many applications, and also recycling and the testing and evaluation already form a full integrated chain. Still, this kind of development are very active. Okay, please go to next page. So here is just now the slide showed in the first page, just to show how active it is in China, not only from the country level, but also from the institute levels. Okay, please go to next page. So I will give you a typical example about the battery for electric vehicles. So now, for the mass production lithium batteries already, the cell energy density could go to the 300 watt-hour per kilogram, which can already drive the car for the 600 kilometers for per charging. Okay, please go to next page. And in order to increase the safety and also increase energy density, so from the Institute of Physics and also from startup company, we have proposed a new idea, so-called institute certification. You may heard from many research group and the company about the solid-state battery. So here we show a practical way to fabricate and produce the lithium batteries with high energy density and high safety via in-situ certification method. This kind of strategy will be scaled up next year to gigawatt-hour and the energy density of the cell level is 360 watt-hour per kilogram. So one charging can drive the NEO's new car ET7 for 1,000 kilometers. So this already will become highly produced next year. Okay, please go to the next page. For short, I will introduce a summary, the R&D direction on batteries. And so on the one hand, so we will develop some new materials to improve the energy density, power density, safety, cycle life. And also we will develop the new technology for production like solid-state battery, pre-lithiation, thermal lamination, dry coating, fast stacking, fast charging, CTP technology, and simulation and smart sensor, and fast evaluation and digital factory. So combine material and also battery technology, which we want to have the much improved performance and also safety and decrease the cost further to satisfy the requirement from many applications, including the electric vehicle. Okay, please go to next page. Now I want to show our national target for next 5 years on energy storage. For the energy storage, this is very hot topic and very important topic. So we want to decrease the LCOS cost below 0.1 RMB per kilowatt hours, which is 0.017 cent US cent per kilowatt hours, and also over 20 years calendar life and over 15,000 cycle life, and also single station, the size is 1 gigawatt hours, and also we want to achieve intrinsic safety, and also with strong intelligent control, intelligent testing, and the smart sensor integrated in our systems. And then I want to also summarize the national project to support the research and the development of the battery. So in China, we have the national key project, and so cover from the material to the energy and to the supporting, including the advanced structure and function material, and also smart material, new electronic material, and the rare earth material, and engineer, and also interdiscipline science. For the energy applications, we have a special project to support energy storage and smart grid, hydrogen energy, and the new energy vehicles, and the renewable energy, and also lots other projects to support the technology. So each program will support 40 to 60 projects, and R&D content and target in each project should not be duplicated. And the budget of each project typically is 1 to 20 million US dollar, and for one project, not for one program. And the battery-related project will cover research and development in the production and also in the innovation chains. So from the fundamental research to the key technology development and also to the large-scale demonstration. So this is the just a very brief introduction on the R&D project in China on battery. Okay, please go to next page. So I hope you are seeing the roadmap of battery for EV and stationary application. So we have already clear target in future. So on the one hand, we will develop high energy density. For those energy density batteries, we will use it for EV with long range. For example, 600 to 1,000 kilometers per charging. And also we try to decrease the cost of the EV batteries by developing lithium iron phosphate and also lithium magnesium oxide batteries, which has low cost and without nickel and cobalt. And for the energy storage, there are 3 technologies will compete each other: lithium iron phosphate, and also spinner lithium magnesium oxide, and also sodium-ion battery. All of them already have demonstrated in the industry, but we need to try to improve the performance and also try to scale up to the very large scale, like the 100 gigawatt hours, such kind of level. Okay, please go to next page.
And this is the last thank you page. So,
okay, yes, thank you page. So if you have any question about the detail about each project, and also the research direction, and also the progress and the status, please contact with me. Thank you. Thank you, Johan.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Hong. This has been very, very interesting. I'm sorry if there was a delay on the slides. We tried to catch up with you as best as we could here. So, okay. But it was very interesting what you gave here. Unfortunately, we only have 5 minutes left for questions and discussion here. But I would like to just ask Dr. Hong one question before we leave this panel. And then there are some dedicated questions to others. But I'd like to ask you what. You showed a very impressive roadmap for the development on lithium-ion batteries and ending up with the solid-state batteries, which of course is a challenge. As you showed, you also had some products with the semi-solid or the solidification of electrolytes. What are the major obstacles that you need to overcome in order to be able to release these batteries in the final state of the solid batteries?
Okay, so currently next year, for startup company in China, we're scale up the production of the hybrid solid liquid electrolyte. Some people call the semi-solid batteries. This will have high energy density and safety. But the final selection could be the all solid state batteries. So now as the material, so such as the inorganic solid electrolyte and the polymer electrolyte will be scaled up in next 3 years. So for example, 10,000 tons level to produce, and also how to fabricate this kind of battery with very low cost and with very high efficiency for production, like a single production line with the 5 to 10 gigawatt hour production ability per year. So then we have to develop some new machine like dry electrode technology and also the thermal lamination and the pre-decision technology. With those kind of new machine and the new production technology, then our solid state battery could be produced after 2026, we predict.
Thank you. I would love to discuss that more. I have some questions, other questions here that I think we can squeeze in. One for Rosalind. Australia has the potential to process several raw advanced materials for batteries. However, this is highly energy intensive. Is there a drive, such as regulation, to ensure the energy used to do this is renewable? What energy source is being used for the projects you described? So there were 2 questions there. So.
Well, there is certainly a drive to increase the sustainability of all the activities throughout the whole value chain of the batteries. As far as I know, that the existing lithium hydroxide production plants are using normal electricity generation, but there are projects in development for lithium battery pack manufacturing in Australia, which is using renewable energy, so solar energy basically, on the factory to power the developments. And as far as recycling goes as well, there is a strong effort to include solar energy in all those developments. So it's certainly something that's at the front of everyone's minds, and it's an abundant resource in Australia. So it's something we can use to reduce our costs and make our projects more cost competitive.
Okay, thank you very much. A question for Noushin. Considering LFP batteries will be considered a key chemistry, what approach is taken to recycling? Is there an economic case to recycle LFP? And this is a question that was raised in an earlier session, but this is interesting to hear what you say about this.
First of all, LFP is going to still play a key role the coming years. We see even in Europe and worldwide clear shift towards LFP for some specific segmentations of electric vehicles. Of course, the remaining value of materials for LFP is not high as for the NMC or NCA or LCO, but nevertheless, it is if you look to an European context, it is required to recycle them from a regulation point of view. So it is it should be done, even if it's economically not viable business model right now. That is something which has to be covered. Otherwise, we will be dealing with environmental disasters.
Okay, thank you. There is one last question I think we can manage to squeeze in, so Debbie also get a question. And this is the current prices of fuel in India a key to divert the customers to electric vehicles? Is that?
Yes. So in the current prices, the diesel and petrol prices are currently increasing, and for the electric mobility and the battery-based vehicles are cheaper than it is less than half of the prices for the conventional fuel vehicle. And the early adopters are the electric buses and electric two-wheelers. Maybe electric car for the mass adoption, it may take time for another 3 to 5 years, but electric two-wheelers and electric buses has already taken the Indian road.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And I think we have to conclude this first panel in the session here. And by thanking you so much, all of you, for taking part. And let's move into the next panel session here. And with the title Emerging Technologies in the World. And we know, and we heard a little bit in the earlier session there, that the supply chain for lithium-ion batteries is seen as problematic in many cases, and that there are drawbacks with the technology in some applications as well. This means that there are alternatives that are being explored. So we will in this session here look into what's coming beyond lithium-ion, as well as looking what's being developed in parallel to that. So and also getting a flavor of new commercial developments as well as research fields here. So, and I'd just like to introduce first out is Peter Oldeker from CellCube in Germany. Peter is the Vice President Global Business Development for CellCube. And CellCube is vanadium redox flow battery manufacturer. So Peter has initially worked as a professional investment manager in the hedge fund and commodity trading for 10 years before crossing over from the dark side, as he says, to the renewable energy project development environment in 2006. Since then, Peter has been working for Deloitte in the strategy and innovation business for global IPP and project developer for developing and operating wind and solar projects in North America, India, Asia, Africa, and that was for the Bushwell Minerals Group. He has got the notable experience in the value chain development of renewable energy and battery storage projects, both in the large-scale utility and behind the meter environment. Peter is a professionally qualified investment manager. Many of the lessons learned over the last decade have been focused on ensuring the project development of large-scale infrastructure projects is able to continuously focus on the security of investment made for certainty of returns. This is a journey that starts with project development and early stage effort in project development. So Peter, please make your presentation here.
And thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for the opportunity. I must admit right at the outset that I am a holder of a science degree, so I'm allowed to be here as a scientist. And CellCube is very much an organization that has a history of about the last 18 years, of which the last 12 have been very firmly in an R&D environment. Part of the pedigree and why we're interesting to some organizations and why we're trying to make our way in the world is that the last 4 of those years have enabled us to scale up that R&D activity to a point where we are now able to produce and commercialize megawatt and megawatt hour sized vanadium redox flow batteries. Could I have the next slide, please? There we go. So essentially, from a technical or a scientific point of view, the characteristics behind a vanadium redox flow battery, I think, are beginning to certainly come across as mainstream. Technically, they are characterized by the ability to claim a very long life, in excess of 25,000 cycles is what we're seeing. We've got systems on the bench downstairs, which have been running unaided, unassisted, uninterfered with for 10 to 11,000 cycles. The battery is characteristically a long duration battery, which means it charges and discharges over extremely long periods of time in comparison to the current or the incumbent battery energy storage technologies. It is importantly technically independent in terms of its power and energy, which means you can scale power or you can scale the energy component independently of each other. It's got a wonderful, wonderful characteristic in that you can use whatever is in the battery. And practically speaking, how we describe it is that it's a very large pool of energy, and how you want to use that energy doesn't have many barriers attached to it. It's incredibly flexible. One of the new innovations that we've managed to take to market in the last couple of months actually is the fact that we can overcharge and over discharge that battery to a total of about 200% of its nominal power rating. So it means if you've got a 1 megawatt battery, you can actually put that battery on the ground and hit that battery very, very hard to get 2 megawatts out of that battery for a period of time. From a circular economy point of view, the electrolyte is absolutely reusable over time if it is of the right quality, which is something that's come out of our scientific experience in the R&D space. It's important to get the quality of the electrolyte right to be able to make the claims that the battery can do what it does. And then importantly, and something for me, which is quite interesting, is that it does not require a clean room environment to actually assemble these batteries. Looking downstairs in our manufacturing plant is quite an experience, because the doors are open, there's plastic sheeting, keeping sections separate from each other. It's very obviously a manufacturing and a production line, which is kind of exciting and kind of important in that it's not an incredibly high-tech environment which has to be kept as clean as the inside of a spaceship. May I have the next slide, please? Commercially, and for us, the important element of being able to take a technology out of R&D is what can we do with that technology commercially? Does it make sense? And in our case, it makes sense as a stationary hybrid micro or mini grid. It gives us the opportunity to focus on the levelized cost of energy storage, which is a great topic for conversation. It is able to cycle multiple times a day with no effect on the health of the battery in terms of its capacity. It is able to scale incredibly precisely to meet both power and energy scopes. What is paid for in the battery is used, so it doesn't sit in an environment or in a characteristic where it needs to be used a certain way, otherwise something bad happens, which means practically and financially, you put it on the ground and it delivers what it needs to deliver. While that sounds very patronizing, at the end of the day, commercially sensible for us means that it is an energy battery. It is not a power battery. That doesn't mean that it cannot deliver power. It means that its focus of how it works is around the energy and the capacity that the battery has in its construction. And then importantly for us, it's a contender for recognition as part of what we believe is very much coming at the world, and that we have to be environmentally aware. We've got to understand climate change, and at the end of the day, the things that we make should have as little harm to the environment as possible. And because of the long life of vanadium as a material, and because of the fact that the major component of a VRFB is actually the vanadium in the electrolyte, we've been successful in presenting it as a contender in the circular economy. Could I have the next slide? So upcoming VRFB innovations, and then I'm done, ladies and gentlemen. Next slide. are really about the obvious, increasing the energy capacity. One of the reasons why the battery is so safe and doesn't burn or explode is because it has a very low energy density to it. There is work to try and increase that energy density, and it's working. The research towards this includes the evolution of less vanadium being used and more other elements being used, such as bromine. There is a very interesting school of work that is working on a vanadium oxygen redox flow hybrid battery. It is very clear that the vanadium redox flow battery and other flow batteries as well are being developed through rational design. So people are looking at these technologies and at these molecular structures right down to the design of how the molecules work and are put together. Very clearly moving towards an organic non-toxic material as part of what I think a lot of other battery energy storage manufacturers are doing. Importantly to us, there is the adoption of new financial innovations to make end users use these batteries. At the moment, the battery is considered very, very expensive. We believe that's part of an exercise to say, well, rather use cheap than something that's actually bespoke for the project at the end of the day. So we are involved in very many instances, such as ensuring the lifetime of the battery from a capacity point of view, ensuring it so that when it's on site, there are other financial organizations that are standing behind us as the manufacturer to say, this battery will do what it's supposed to do for the next 25,000 cycles. And then very clearly, the overriding direction of travel when it comes to research and innovation is around recognizing the integration of renewables into the electricity grid. And our own research and innovation is, what does that mean for our technology, which is a long duration technology? Safety is important, affordability is important, and then seamlessly replacing the lithium-ion batteries that currently dominate is part of our agenda and is part of the direction that we are looking to travel in. Next slide, please. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I hope that there are some questions. Please catch me offline. As an organization, we are absolutely willing to show and tell as to what it is that we're trying to do. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Peter, very interesting. I'd love to discuss a little bit more about the supply chain when it comes to vanadium and see if we have time to do that at the end of this session.
Fantastic.
So now over to the next presenter here, which is Dr. Adam Best from CSIRO in Australia, where he is a principal research scientist. Dr. Best has been involved in battery research for many years, both in Australia, but also in several other universities in Germany, New York, and Delft. So traveling around. Currently, he's leading the CSIRO's lithium battery development, including focus on advanced electrolytes, materials characterization, and supporting the development of an Australian battery industry. He's also co-host and host and co-chair for the 2022 International Meeting on Lithium Batteries, as we heard about here earlier, which is going to be held in Australia, in Sydney. So Peter, or Adam, sorry, please take it away.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction, Johan. Just like to thank the organisers for the generous invitation to speak here today and to share some of the work that we are ongoing here at the CSIRO. Next slide, if you could, please. So in Australia, in terms of next generation battery innovation, there is quite a number of research groups amongst a range of universities around Australia who are involved in next gen development, and that can include both electrode materials, electrolyte materials, device fabrication, and the like. This has been ongoing for quite a number of years. I think Australia was a little bit of a pioneer in some of this early work when the rest of the world was getting on with lithium ion to get it some attention. I think we were starting to do next gen before it was even something that anyone was interested in. So I think there's quite a long history there. And so we're now very much involved in both lithium metal and solid state devices, but also alternative chemistries such as sodium, calcium, aluminium, and other devices. But today I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about some of the work we're doing at CSIRO, and that's really with regards to innovation within the lithium-ion battery system, and particularly as we look at the value chain there in the bottom left, the fact that, as my colleague Rosalind had pointed out earlier, where we have all the mineral elements that we can need to make a lithium-ion battery, but we don't do a lot when it comes to refining and processing. But that's now very much in the process of changing. And we at CSIRO are really working with Australian industry to both reduce the energy intensity, water use, and look at innovative ways of actually processing raw battery materials to both either battery precursor or into battery active materials. And so I'd like to spend a few minutes just to share some of the work that we're doing at the CSIRO around this type of work. And part of this work also is a real issue for the world globally, in that the yield that we have in many of the mineral ores that are used to we recover metal elements from, such as nickel, cobalt, manganese, copper, aluminum, we're now getting down to very, very low yields within our ores. And so we need even better methods to actually recover as much of that metal as possible in order that we can have the volumes of material that we need to sustain what a 2030 battery demand globally looks like. Next slide, please. So I'd like to just run through, as I said, a few processes that we're involved in and hopefully highlight some of the innovation that we've brought to the picture. So today, this is a particular project we were involved in, which is called the direct nickel process, or DNI process. And basically, we look at how we can actually recover a mixed hydroxide product directly from a mineral ore. And you can see all the multiple stages that you see we go through there in order to recover this mixed hydroxide product precipitate, which is circled there in blue. And you'll note that that's a nickel cobalt precipitate, and the little image on the left there shows you the beautiful green color. This technology was actually piloted in Australia in our CSIRO and our Waterford facilities in Western Australia, where we actually built a demonstrator plant for this technology, and this technology is now going into production in northern Queensland, actually where Ros is based. If we go to the next slide. And this is where the Townsville Energy Chemical Hub work is involved in here. And so there's a company called Altilium who has the processing has a processing plant which allows them to generate a nickel cobalt mixed hydroxide precipitate. And we actually have to help working with them. We have developed the sulfate refinery that produces both cobalt sulfate and nickel sulfate. And you can see some images there on the left of those products. The interesting part of this process also is one of the byproducts of this process is actually aluminum hydroxide, and you can see that that drops out as a 99.99% HPA product. And as we all know, HPA is the darling of the market at the moment in terms of coatings on separators, also on cathode materials, and there's even some exploration of coatings on graphite materials. And this is using material that comes from New Caledonia. So this process is very much optimized to the type of laterite ore that comes from New Caledonia. In Australia, we have a very different laterite ore. And so this process is currently being, we're actually looking at new processes to actually look at this, how we can recover that material. Next slide, please. Natural graphite, as Ros mentioned earlier, is also a huge topic. Australian miners are extraordinarily active in natural graphite, not only in Australia, but also overseas. And so you may be familiar with some of the graphite miners, such as Talga, who is active in Sweden, mineral resource commodities, who are active in Norway, but also have mining tenements in Australia, Syrah in Mozambique, Ecograph and others also in Africa. And there's now also in Australia other Australian miners such as Renascor and Lithium Energy Limited who are now trying to recover natural graphite. So one of the challenges of natural graphite is obviously the first stage purification, which actually is very dependent on the mineral ore that the graphite comes in. So you have a range of impurities there that has to be tailored to the mineral source that you have in order that you can actually remove those, as much of those impurities as possible, to at least a 95% graphite product. We've worked assiduously at CSIRO to remove HF-based final stage processing, And this is because it's extraordinarily difficult to remove things such as aluminium, iron, and silicon impurities. And so we've actually worked on processes to actually remove those with non-HF products, and we have been very successful in developing these routes as well. We're currently involved in a large project with the Future Battery Industry CRC with a number of partners, where we're actually looking at how we can actually improve spheronization and coating, and also in situ silicon addition to composite anodes as well. Next slide, please. And the last one, which is really important towards the movement towards next generation batteries, is how do we sustainably produce lithium metal? So currently lithium metal is produced by a Downs cell type arrangement, which uses considerable amounts of energy and can produce at least 40 kilos of chlorine for every kilo of lithium metal that you produce. And so it's a completely unsustainable process. But at the moment, demand for lithium metal, while it's extraordinarily expensive, next gen batteries are really still really emergent at the moment, so there's still not the demand for the amounts of lithium metal. But when it does come, we do need far better and improved processes for the production of lithium metal that is less energy intense, produces less byproducts, and can actually be sustainably produced. And so here we'd like to present the Sonic technology, whereby we've now actually broadened the concept that you see here, where we start with a carbon and lithium oxide, that should be carbonate. I should apologize for that error on that slide, which we calcine to form into a lithium oxide together with carbon. We briquette that, we put that in a reactor, and we can basically heat that up into the melting point beyond of lithium, where lithium is in a vapor state, and we can push that through a Laval nozzle. By pushing that through the Laval nozzle, we can actually prevent the reversion of lithium back to lithium oxide, and we actually are able to collect a lithium metal powder as a result of that. So currently we're exploring this quite deeply, and this is a really important, I think, technology that could be used for a range of different applications, particularly for upscaling of products as part of a recycling process. And we're looking forward to presenting this technology and moving this technology forward into the future. And with that, I'd like to thank you all very much for your attention. And if you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch. Thank you. You're on mute, Johan.
Thank you, Adam. You should be monitoring this session, not me. Thank you very much for this. It's very interesting to see the research on the upstream side of the battery value chain as well. It's as I agree with you totally. There's lots to be done on that side of things. So let's quickly move on to the next presentation here, which is from Marcel Meers, who is going to talk about the Generation 5 beyond lithium battery technologies. And Dr. Marcel is a retired professional from a career at Umicore, and he has started a private consulting company, Sustesco, and he is specialized in batteries and hydrogen for e-mobility and stationary energy storage. He's also a technical advisor at EMIRI. And so please go ahead and make your presentation here, Marcel.
Thank you, Johan, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can I have the first slide, please? Topic of my presentation is indeed Generation 5 and beyond lithium battery technologies. And this is the kind of roadmap that we are using in Europe. And their timeline. We see the different battery generations. We are currently in generation 3A. That means high nickel containing cathodes, silicon type anode material. Moving now progressively into solid state. Different subdivisions in generation 4. For A, for B, for C, depending on the chemistries. And the topic here of this short introduction is Generation 5. So post-lithium-ion systems, first based on conversion type materials, lithium sulfur, lithium oxygen, and beyond lithium battery technologies, so without lithium. What is the driver for those systems? That they contain no critical raw materials or few critical raw materials, with the exception of lithium, that they have the potential for low cost, both for mobility as for stationery. But their benchmark is quite challenging. We expect to achieve 450, 500 watt-hour per kilogram with solid state, so doing better than that, and eventually also doing better in full volumetric density. Next, please. So what are the different systems? First, maybe remark that we are discussing coupled energy and power systems, CEPs, so where at least one active material is present in the cell, giving as well power as energy within the cell. We are not considering decoupled energy systems. These are the redox flow systems. And we hope that these systems will give solutions both for mobility, but maybe especially for stationary storage. So the first one is conversion-based lithium systems. Those are, I will discuss briefly, lithium sulfur and lithium air. There are other metal air systems like zinc air, shortly to be discussed. Thirdly, the alternative ion-based systems, monovalent like sodium ion, or multivalent like magnesium metal, aluminum metal, or calcium metal ion systems, and a few other technologies. General remark, especially for EVs, these generation 5 technologies still need fundamental breakthrough research and innovation work. And we are not expecting them, maybe with one exception, to become commercial before 2030. Lithium ion is expected to stay state-of-the-art technology for minimum 1 decade longer. As said before, the challenges for performances are high, and especially the one for cycle life, where we have targets or realities with lithium ion of something like 2,000 cycles. These systems here are relatively weak in cycle life, so targets have been set here at 800 cycles. Next, please. So I will give you a brief overview of what Europe is doing in this domain. And first on lithium sulfur, there have been projects in the past like LISEN, ALICE, and there is now one big project ongoing being LISA project. There is a lot of progress made in lithium sulfur, but there are still technical problems, such as the cycling stability, as said before, here specifically in lithium sulfur because of shuttling effects of polysulfides. Conductivity of the sulfur cathode is also an issue, but there is made progress, especially in the LISA project. On lithium air, there are no current, if I'm not wrong, no current projects ongoing, but there have been previous ones before 2016, like Labor, lithium air cathodes, stable. Lithium air can be made aqueous, aprotic, or in solid state, rechargeable configuration, theoretically high energy density, but still suffering from issues like energy efficiency, cycle life, and rate capability. In general, everything what is related to lithium metal type conversion systems, the risk of lithium dendrite formation is present. The next, please. In the metal air-based systems, and again, looking at EU research in this domain, there has been a very interesting project which has finished in 2018, ZES, zinc air secondary batteries, rechargeable batteries, have been studied the zinc electrode in detail, the shape change, the corrosion of the zinc material, dendrite issues, and that in different electrolytes, in ammonium chloride, but also in organic ones. And the project has also developed new catalysts for the air electrode. There's another one, and that has just started in 2021, not on an air-based system, but with zinc and zinc nickel. The targets are not very high in energy density, but the system has real potential in stationary storage. The next, please. Next slide. Yeah, in the alternative ion-based systems, there is first the monovalent sodium ion. There have been several European projects on this subject, like NIADES, Napanode, and there is one now currently ongoing, NAIMA, focusing on low cost and moderate energy densities, about 200 watt-hour per kilogram, together with 500 watt per kilogram power density, but focusing on higher cycles, not 6,000 cycles, and at a good cost performance. There's another one on magnesium currently ongoing, and that is eMagic. eMagic is working on magnesium ion-based systems, but as well on magnesium sulfur conversion type systems, and developing new new magnesium materials, novel alloys with better electrochemical stability, but at the same time developing new electrolytes, and that as well in the conversion types sulfide configuration. Next, please. Finally, in the alternative ion-based systems, there is calcium, metal ion, and European projects have been CAMBAT, BATCA, but also CARBAT, if I remember well. And on the aluminum ion side, there has been Li-ion, focusing high specific energy aluminum ion rechargeable systems. And here we come a little bit to the most limiting factor of the alternative ion-based systems. The radius of the ion, be it sodium, be it magnesium, be it aluminum, is larger than the one of lithium, and as such, intercalation in the graphite becomes more complex and more difficult, especially when complex ions are formed like aluminum chloride in the aluminum ion system. Next slide, please. So that was my end. Thank you for your attention. If you want further information on this, please consult the EMIRI website and also follow the EMIRI social media as given below on the slide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcel. It's very comforting to see that the European Commission at least is spending a lot of money on the research in the area. So very good. We are getting up to the final presentation of this session, and it's Rosa Palacin, who is a professor at the Institute of the Ciencia de Materials de Barcelona. I hope I said that properly, which is at the Spanish National Research Council. Her full career has been focused in rechargeable batteries materials, initially nickel or lithium-based system, and more recently covering the alternative chemistry such as sodium ion, magnesium, calcium. Specific emphasis is set in tailoring structure and microstructure of electrode materials to maximize electrochemical performance, additional technologies, and development of new materials for emerging concepts. She's an associate editor of Chemistry of Materials and serves as the board of the International Battery Association and Batteries Europe, the ETIP, on the European Union. So please take the floor.
Thank you very much, Johan, for the introduction. And thanks also for inviting me to be part of this panel. And my presentation is, I would say, a natural follow-up of Marcel's presentation. And in fact, the idea is to show that this label of Generation 5 technologies covers a wide range of different concepts, which have different features and also different TRLs, and so that they have a different horizon in times of arrival into market, if finally all the prospects become true. So here I would like to highlight two very different systems with very different levels of development. With one of them is sodium ion and the other one is calcium metal. Sodium ion technology is essentially the same concept as lithium ion, but in this case, instead of having lithium as the carrier ion, it's sodium. So pretty much the same thing, basing on intercalation. The only thing is that the limit for the potential of the negative electrode is the limit for sodium plating, which is a little bit above that for the case of lithium. But essentially, the cell voltage will depend on both battery materials. And on the opposite extreme of the TRLs are the metal batteries. In this case, I will mention about calcium metal. In this case, you have plating and stripping of the metal on the negative electrode, which comes with added hurdles, as we know for the case of lithium. And at the positive electrode, one may think of different materials. So next slide, please. So the sodium ion technology is by no means new, and intercalation chemistry was studied in the 60s and the 70s, both for lithium and for sodium and for other ions. And at the late 80s or early 90s, there were also already proof of concept given on sodium ion technologies, in this case with alloys, sodium lead alloys on the negative electrode and layered sodium cobalt oxide on the positive side. Then at this time, lithium ion batteries were commercialized, so essentially all the research on sodium was mostly abandoned, but around 2010, with the high increase on the cost of lithium-based raw materials, there was again a new driving force to rediscover this technology. And here I'm just showing a chart with all the materials that have been developed that can intercalate sodium at higher or very low potential. And in the top graph, there is the energy density for the positive electrode materials using hard carbon as negative electrode, and on the lower graph, it's the opposite, is the negative electrode materials with different positives. And this is just to show that the energy densities on par, for instance, with graphite LMO can be achieved. So the fact that lithium and sodium are chemically that similar for sure grants a faster progress of the technology, even though one has to bear in mind the differences in ionic radius, which was mentioned by Marcel, which means difference in coordination and crystal chemistry. These also bring about difference in the polarizing character, so the diffusion of the solvated ion in the electrolytes, the kinetics, the solvation energy, the solubility of the SEI can be an issue because sodium salts are much more soluble. One interesting difference is that the alloying behavior is different. So sodium does not form any alloy with aluminum at low potential, which means that one can use aluminum as current collector also on the negative side, which is very interesting in terms of cost and sustainability. And another thing to bear in mind is that in this case, one has to use hard carbon as negative electrode, as graphite does not intercalate any sodium. So all these bring in some interesting perspectives in terms of cost and resource usages, and also thinking of less risk supply for sodium-based materials. And this has been analyzed in this publication here. And essentially, one of the main advantages, for instance, is the use of aluminum as negative electrode current collector, which also has advantages in terms of safety when transporting those batteries. So next slide. So this, of course, has translated into the emergence of companies, of startup companies, and it was already mentioned before in this session, the existence of companies producing these cells in China. So this is a little bit the landscape in Europe. Faradion is probably the oldest one. I think it was created in 2011. In Sheffield in the UK, and they are producing cells using layered cathode materials, and they have a very interesting roadmap in terms of performance improvement. They are building pouch cells. Then there is Tiamat, which appeared later in Amiens, the north of France. In this case, the positive electrode is a polyanionic material containing vanadium. And also there are others like Altris in Sweden, focusing very much on the positive electrode materials, which consist of Prussian blue analogs, or also a company in Wales, mostly focusing on the negative electrode, which is a carbon composite. Next slide. And finally, this is the last slide, just to show that the situation which has the opposite for calcium metal. One can calculate using very simple forms what would be the energy density of calcium metal cells using porous electrodes, pretty much like those used in the lithium-ion battery field. So we can think of different hypothetical positive electrode materials with different voltages or different capacities, and we see that for even moderate voltages around 3 point something and moderate capacities, we can be on par with the state-of-the-art lithium-ion technology, but of course this is easier said than done. Calcium plating is still exhibiting many issues, and the amount of electrolytes available is not that high, and it has to be researched further. And also there are not that many cathode materials which reversibly intercalate calcium. So here the proof of concept remains to be proved. And that was all from my side. So next slide, if I'm available for any contact or any question, and thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Rosa. And we actually have reached the end of the total session here. So I'm sorry we will not have time to pick up any of the questions. It's been a very, very interesting session we have here, but I need to conclude it right now. And I'll do that by thanking you extremely much for taking part in this session here for the last hour here. So thank you very much. I also thank the audience, but I suggest that you, after the coffee and networking that you will be doing now, proceed to the next session at 4 o'clock, which is further improving battery safety, what's needed, and also research and innovation support for the further deployment of stationary batteries. So once again, thank you very much for taking part in this, and it's been very, very interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.